And I will introduce Pam Schmidt, who will introduce today's session. Thank you, Pam.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I see we do have more participants who are at least listening in, so that's good news. It's my pleasure to introduce Quinn Yager. She's the Marketing and Fundraising Coordinator for Groundwork Denver. And you have already seen some of the talents that she's shared with us with the videos the last 2 weeks in the worship service. She's the one who has created those. Quinn was born and raised in Denver, and she's a recent graduate of Colorado College with a BA in environmental science. She is dedicated to keeping our communities healthy for all by fighting for environmental justice. And today she will share with us the broad range of programs that Groundwork Denver has implemented to advocate for environmental justice. And perhaps she'll also share with us some ways that we can be partners in their efforts. So welcome, Quinn, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Pam, and thank you to everyone for tuning in and taking some time out of your Sunday to learn a little bit about Groundwork. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started, and to make sure that everyone, oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing, so I'll need permission. Perfect, there we go. Okay, awesome. I'm going to press present. Can I get confirmation that everyone can see this all right once it loads?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, yeah, so as Pam said, my name is Quinn Yager. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Marketing and Fundraising Coordinator for Groundwork Denver, which, as it often does in the nonprofit sector, means that I wear a lot of hats. I do a very wide many different things, from video work, as you guys have seen, to planning fundraising events and getting to do cool presentations like this for great people like you. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Groundwork Denver as a whole, and I have titled this presentation Fighting for Localized Community-Based Environmental Justice from a Variety of Angles. And I understand that is a mouthful. It's quite a lot of words, and I think that sort of does a good, accurate job of representing Groundwork Denver as an organization, as well as the concept of environmental justice, because they are very complicated, multifaceted. Environmental justice is a complicated, multifaceted issue, and Groundwork Denver is a very complex, multifaceted organization. So I think that does a great job of representing it. And as we go forward today, we'll sort of break down that title so it is maybe a little bit less confusing and vague, and gives you a better job of understanding a little bit about what we do. So I'll go right ahead and dive in by talking a little bit about our mission as an organization. So Groundwork Denver is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we were founded in 2002. And we are an independent nonprofit, but we do function as a partner of Groundwork USA, which is a national organization that has chapters all over the country. So we function underneath them, but we are independent as our own organization. And our mission is to bring about the sustained improvement of the physical environment and to promote health and well-being through community-based partnerships and action. And so to break that down a little bit, as a whole, that mission is kind of what I see the concept of environmental justice as. And back in 2002, when Groundwork Denver was founded, the concept of environmental justice was not as well known or popularized at that point in time. And so I think this was sort of our way of describing what we meant as an environmental justice organization. So you sort of have environmental based organizations that might be focused in conservation or renewable energy, or maybe political advocacy, those kind of things. And Groundwork Denver more focuses on the community people aspect of the environmental crisis, how it's disproportionately impacting communities, how it's impacting different people, how it's impacting our lives and the health and well-being of our lives as a whole. And so that's sort of the environmental justice lens that we function under. And so we're all about improving the physical health in the environment, but also ensuring that we're improving the health and physical well-being of people and communities, and doing this in a very like community-based way. So yeah, that is our mission as a whole. And moving forward a little bit, I'll put up this map. And this is super helpful because we are Groundwork Denver, and sometimes we function as Groundwork Colorado. And these are the areas within Denver that we mainly focus a lot of our work in. So we focus really heavily in Westwood, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea, Northeast Park Hill, Commerce City, Montbello, Northwest Aurora, and then the city of Sheridan, which is not technically in the city of Denver, but is a little community right outside. And it's a heavily Latinx community. And we do a ton of work there. We have a lot of partners there that are super, super great. And that's sometimes why we function as Groundwork Colorado rather than Groundwork Denver, because we do sometimes do work outside of the city limits. Yeah, so you can see that there. Our office is actually specifically in 5 Points, but most of the work we do is in those neighborhoods that we've highlighted. And I'll talk about those a little bit later as we get more in depth within the presentation. All right, so moving on. Next. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about are the 3 pillars of environmental justice. And these are sort of 3 pillars that we came up with as an organization ourselves back when we were sort of starting to really claim the term environmental justice. So for the first many years that we functioned as an organization, we didn't necessarily consider ourselves as an environmental justice organization. And I think that was mainly because, again, as I stated, the term hadn't really been popularized. It wasn't very normalized. People didn't necessarily understand what it meant. But a few years back, when we finally were like, the work we do is environmental justice, so we should claim that and say that to clarify it, we came up with these 3 pillars that sort of, for us as an organization, defined what environmental justice means and what we wanted it to mean in terms of our work. So those pillars are 1, reducing harm, 2, equal benefits, and 3, decision-making power. So the way that I sort of personally think of these when I approach the 3 pillars is that I think the first 2, both reducing harm and equal benefits, fall under the category of sort of re-clarifying the concept of equity versus equality. And I know this is something that we've been talking about a lot as a society in the last year. And environmental justice is heavily based in the concept of equity, which basically means that we're striving for equality at the finish line, is how I like to say that. So we want at the finish line every single person to have access to clean, healthy air and have equal access to the environment. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to provide higher levels of support or opportunity to some communities that are maybe starting farther back, so that when they get to the finish line, they're at the same equal level. So that comes in with reducing harm, which is first and foremost, because within environmental justice, a large concept is that as the climate crisis has worsened, something we found is that certain communities are disproportionately feeling the impacts of the climate crisis. And this is on an international scale. Oftentimes, the poorer developing countries are taking the brunt force of a lot of the impacts that the wealthier developed countries are causing through their pollution. And then on a national scale within our own country, a lot of the poorer, more minority communities are the ones that are taking the brunt of these impacts. And so first and foremost, we want to reduce that harm and make it so these harmful impacts are not as harmful for these communities. And then secondly, you go into equal benefits. And that's ensuring that the benefits of the continued fight for environmentalism and for just the environmental movement as a whole is equal. So that means that the benefits of having access to like outdoor spaces, and as we clean up our outdoor spaces and we ensure the safety of our water quality and we ensure that our mountains are clean, making sure that all communities have equal access to this is a big part of environmental justice. So it's not just the wealthy communities that can go and enjoy the environment that we've ensured is safe. So that would be the second one. And then third is the concept of decision-making power. And I think with Groundwork Denver, this is definitely one that I think we focus on most heavily. And this is basically just ensuring that every single community And every single person, type of person, no matter their background, has a voice when it comes to discussing environmental issues and solutions to these issues. And as a whole, the environmental movement, I think, struggles with accessibility. It's historically been a very whitewashed movement. It's historically been very like upper and middle class movement. So you need a certain level of money, of education to be able to even participate in conversations. And so within Groundwork Denver, we work very hard to make sure that every single person gets to have a say. Every single person, no matter your background, gets to be like, this is what I want for my community moving forward. These are the choices I would like to make, just so that the decisions are being made reflect the actual diversity of our country as a whole and our communities, rather than just showing a few stakeholders. Cool, so moving on, going a bit more into Groundwork Denver. This is sort of breaking down why I titled this presentation what I did. And as a whole, I think marketing Groundwork Denver, I've always kind of had a difficult time because it's not a simple organization. Like I think there are some nonprofits, I always use this example, but for example, a nonprofit that's based in, let's say like the Dumb Friends League, where like their whole mission is saving animals, sheltering them, and then giving them homes. That's a wonderful mission, obviously, very much so support that. And it's also a very simple mission. It's easy for people to grasp. And with Groundwork Denver, it's sort of like, we have a hand here, we have a hand here. We're doing all these different things that I find it difficult sometimes to be like, oh yes, this is in one sentence what our organization does. But I found that if I broke it down into these three things, no matter the program, these concepts were always present in all the work that Groundwork does. So first and foremost, we cover a variety of angles. So we have so many programs. We have water program, food program, land program, youth program. We have a wide variety of programs, which means that we're attacking the concept of environmental justice and the issue of the climate crisis from every single angle possible, which is necessary to ensure that it potentially gets solved. So that's first and foremost. Second is community-based and community-driven decision-making. And we sort of talked about this previously, but yeah, again, as I said, the communities that we're advocating for, our whole mission is trying to advocate for and better these specific communities, Westwood, Global Bay Area, Swansea. So if we're trying to make them better, it seems a little ridiculous that they wouldn't be involved in the conversation, because why should we be making choices for them without their input? So we really like to include community who have that lived experience of living in these neighborhoods and knowing where the pollution is coming from, knowing what needs to be better, and including them in the conversation so we have that perspective and that voice. And then lastly is the concept of increasing accessibility at every opportunity. And for that, basically what that means is we want to go to communities rather than waiting for them to come to us. And so we are always trying to strategize ways that essentially we can go to them rather than being like, we'll have, an open mic opportunity or something like that. People can come and like voice their issues with pollution within the community. We like to go to the communities and start that conversation so that, they feel cared about, and also, we're just including them in the conversation, and we're always ensuring their participation. So now we're going to get a bit into the actual programs of Groundwork Denver. And as I stated before, we have a lot of programs. It's a very, for being a small nonprofit, it's kind of a very large nonprofit. And so today I'll talk to you about a few of our programs. I won't cover all of them because there just isn't time, but we have our youth program, our water program, our energy program, and our food program. And I'll talk about those four today. And I think those four make up a big core of the work that Groundwork does and the work that we have done. But we also have our Climate Safe Neighborhoods program, which is very specifically an environmental justice program. And then we have our Sheridan Inspire initiative, which is a partner that we work with, and they work specifically in the Sheridan community. And then both the air program and land program are not currently active, but they were a really, really big part of Groundwork at one point in time. I don't know if you guys, being longtime residents of Denver, remember the air quality issue that used to be prevalent in the Global Bay Area Swansea neighborhood. It was very, very bad. And historically, they remain the most polluted neighborhood in the entirety of the United States. And Groundwork Denver was at one point very involved in that. And we remain involved with that through our climate program. And then our land program was really big when we were putting together the Platte River Open Space, which is an open space that we converted, and it was a brown site that we converted into a park. So yeah, those aren't currently programs that we have a program manager for, but they might come back up in the future. Yeah, so first and foremost is our youth program. And I'd say that anyone you ask about Groundwork Denver, if they know about us, they know about our youth program. And I think it's like a very large component and core of what we do as an organization. And they are focused on molding youth environmentalists and in providing employment and professional development for low-income students in their teens and into their early 20s. So essentially every single summer we have our youth programs, and we employ usually between 60 and 70 youth, sometimes more, and they'll be on green and blue teams, where basically they're kids usually between the ages of 14 and 24, and they'll spend their summer working in the communities where they live. So they're kids that are from these neighborhoods, Westwood, Global, Elyria, Swansea, and they'll spend their summers working on environmentally based projects within those communities. And so that looks a lot of different ways. Sometimes they'll work on community gardens and community farms. Sometimes they will sell local food at farm stands. They'll work with us on redistributing food, to focus on the food crisis. They'll do workshops for their communities to teach them about environmental issues. They'll do rain barrel trainings and install rain barrels. So depending on the day, they can be doing a wide variety of things. But why I think they're so important is because I think they form a very, very strong bridge between Groundwork Denver and these communities we're working in, because they are children that are from these communities. They have that lived experience. They know how to talk to their parents. And a lot of these communities that we're working with are predominantly Spanish speaking. So having that bilingual bridge is also really important. So they're coming to Groundwork Denver, they're learning about environmentalism, they're working within environmentalism, and then they're going back to their communities and they're sharing that information. And they're getting to advocate for its importance in a way that is really accessible to those other community members that maybe would have felt intimidated by it or wouldn't have been able to speak the language because they're predominantly Spanish speaking. So those are super, super great. And we're bringing it back to this map that I had just shown. And that's because we have two types of teams within Groundwork Denver. We have our green teams and our blue teams. And I'll talk a little bit about how those are different. But our green teams focus predominantly in those neighborhoods that you see that are painted green, and the blue teams are in the blue neighborhoods. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that. Next, cool. So our green teams is our core of youth environmentalists, and they act as the organization's task force to implement projects to improve Denver's urban environment. And so the principal goals of the green team specifically are preparing youth for educational and career success, encouraging youth to become engaged members of the community, providing youth employment, especially in green sector jobs, and demonstrating alternative career pathways in fields like natural resources and wildlife management, as well as lab and field sciences. So we use these green teams a lot to do projects that improve community. That's very important. But more than anything, I think we want them to function as sort of a lens for opportunity. We want these kids to be able to see the environmental sector as a potential place for them to work. And we also really like to highlight, as Groundwork Denver, the upward mobility of green team members into our organization. So I think we've done a really great job of that. Like our energy program director, who I'm not sure if you guys have watched the video yet. If you haven't, you'll probably see him next week, but his name is Sadat Castaneda, and he has been with Groundwork for over 10 years. And he started as a member of one of our youth green teams, and he just worked his way up. He became an energy auditor, and now he directs one of our programs. And our youth program director we just hired, Joe, is also a longtime youth member. We have a previous youth team member on one of our board of directors. So we really like to keep green team members within our organization and to have them work for Groundwork Denver, because I think that further cements the bridge between Groundwork and communities, which I think is very cool. And then we're focusing a little bit on our blue teams. Those are basically the same as our green teams, but they focus specifically on water quality in the Bear Creek watershed. And they're currently based in the Sheridan neighborhood. So we'll get a little into this a little bit within our water program, but we have a few members of the Blue Team that will work year round testing the water quality in the Bear Creek watershed, and always doing that. They collect field samples, they distribute rain barrels, and they canvass a lot in their communities to educate their neighbors about the importance of addressing environmental issues. And Blue Team members, we would like to expose them to career options from partners at the EPA, the Bear Creek watershed, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, South Suburban Parks and Rec, and just we like to show them a lot of potential career opportunities within water quality and water management, which is a huge field in the environmental movement and is only going to become bigger as the climate crisis continues. So yeah, that's a good transition into our water program, which is another big one of our programs and is tied into a lot of the work we do with our youth program. And so the water program is a multifaceted program that functions to increase the health of our watersheds and riparian habitats, all while including a diverse group of stakeholders and supporting youth environmentalists. So I believe that you guys have learned about our water program a little bit in one of the videos, but it also is super multifaceted, functions with a lot of things. But one of the main things that we do is water quality testing on the Bear Creek watershed. So I don't know the exact numbers, but the Bear Creek watershed has been on the EPA's list of impaired waters for, I think, about over 10 years now, which essentially means that it's a very dirty, polluted source of water that isn't safe for a lot of community to be functioning in, playing in. And so what Groundwork Denver works right now to is we're attempting to, so the reason it's on that list of impaired waters is because there are very high levels of E. coli in the water, which is very dangerous. And we are trying to function through our Bear Creek water quality testing. We are trying to figure out where exactly this exaggerated or very large source of E. coli is coming from. So we don't necessarily know right now, and we're trying to identify the issue. So then once the issue has been identified, we can try and mediate it and stop that inflow of E. coli to return this water, this watershed back to a safe space. So that's one of the main things that we do. And our youth on our Blue Team help out a lot with that testing. So in the summer, they're out 2 times a week, at least once a week, testing that. And throughout the rest of the year, you can see this guy in the back of this picture. This is Odie, and he is one of our Blue Team supervisors, and he helps out year round, twice a month, no matter the weather, with water quality testing. So that's a super important component of the water program. Another thing that we do other water quality testing. That includes rain barrel testing, testing other watersheds. We do riparian habitat improvements. That's a big thing that we do, which is basically going along the land along rivers and removing invasive species and replanting native species. And that's trying to restore the riparian habitats around watersheds back to a healthy state. We also do home improvements, which includes we install rain barrels and we do workshops with communities for how to install rain barrels. We install free rain barrels. We also do downspout redirection, which can help with flooding within houses. And this summer, we're actually going to be putting together rain gardens, which are gardens that you connect your rain barrel directly to them, and they're species that like thrive with that kind of rainwater watering. So we'll be doing those this summer, and we're really excited about that. Cool. Another one of our programs that I'd like to talk about is our energy program. And I would say that this is another one of our biggest programs. I'd say our youth program and our energy program together maybe make up the majority of what we do. And the energy program provides free energy efficiency services and weatherization upgrades to qualifying households, as well as educational opportunities for communities. This program strives to reduce the cost of energy bills, save energy and carbon emissions, and keeps residents safe and comfortable in their homes. So the bulk of what we do within our energy program is we conduct home energy audits. So there are certain qualifications a household has to meet. Usually it's the amount of mean income they make. So it's for low income households. And if they qualify, our wonderful team of energy auditors will go to the house and basically identify all of the ways that we could improve this house in terms of energy efficiency. So this can be as simple as providing some insulation in the crack of a door, to providing insulation in an attic, to replacing a refrigerator that's maybe very, very old and sucking energy, to planting a shade tree in the front yard so that the house is cooler as a whole. And through grants, we get to do this all for free for qualifying households, which is really, really cool. And our energy audit team does a really great job. And I think what's awesome about them is that we focus on clientele. And so it's more about the client's needs. And so if we find something within a house that needs to be fixed that Groundwork Denver does not have the capacity to do, we will immediately connect you with a partner organization that can do that for you. And we have that network of organizations that we can get anything fixed. If you have a leaky toilet and you need that fixed, we can connect you with who can do that. And it's really based on saving energy, on saving money for these clients, and like keeping these clients comfortable within their homes, which in many ways can reduce gentrification in our neighborhoods. Because if we can keep clients comfortable in their homes, if we can keep them saving money on energy bills, then we can keep people in their homes and reduce them having to relocate to elsewhere. Yes, and that's a super wonderful program. We do that year round. We're constantly doing energy audits, no matter the season. And yeah, that is one of ours. And then last but not least, I'd like to talk about the food program, which is another big component of what Groundwork Denver does. And the food program seeks to combat the presence of urban food deserts within the city of Denver by providing affordable, healthy, locally grown produce through our hydroponic greenhouse and our Fresh Food Connect program. So first and foremost is our hydroponic greenhouse, Groundwork Greens. And this was built, I want to say back in 2014. Sorry, some of my dates are not great, but it is an 1,800 square foot hydroponic greenhouse, and it produces about 4,000 pounds of fresh vegetables every year, which are distributed through our CSA program. And hydroponics, for those of you that don't know, means growing crops without without soil, only water. Water is very important. So as you can kind of see in these photos behind this text, there's these sort of like white tubes that run along. And basically what we do is you make a nutrient cocktail that's water with a bunch of different essential nutrients. And you run it along the root systems of these plants, and they're able to grow through that. And what's great about hydroponics is that you can grow food a lot quicker in a lot smaller of a space. So within this 1,800 square foot greenhouse, we're allowed to grow 4,000 pounds of produce, whereas normally, this would take multiple fields of farms to do in traditional soil growing. So it's a great opportunity for urban farming. It also uses about, I don't even know what the exact measurement is, but it uses a lot less water than traditional soil farming, which seems kind of contradictory because it's only farming with water. But realistically, within hydroponics, it's a closed loop system. So all of the water you're using is circulating back and rewatering the plants again. And we use the same batch of water for a week, 2 weeks, and it stays that way, and then we replace it. Whereas when you're doing traditional soil farming, you're watering the plants and that water is going back into the ground, and it's not necessarily taken up again and be able to be reused. Also in traditional soil farming, you're watering everything else in the soil, be that weeds, animal, bugs, that kind of stuff. You're wasting water on those. Whereas in hydroponic farming, you're just watering these specific roots. So it's a super, super efficient way to grow things. And so, yeah, we grow 4,000 pounds of fresh vegetables every year. And our CSA program is a community shared agriculture program that people sign up for. And every week they get to come and pick up a supply of greens. And what's really awesome is that most of our CSA program participants live within a 3-mile radius of the greenhouse, which is truly implementing like localized agriculture. Like their food is being grown within a 5-mile radius of where they live. And that's just reducing so much of the cost of transportation, which is a large component of where carbon emissions come from in our agricultural industry. So that's super, super awesome. And it's a really cool place. I enjoy working there a lot. I believe you guys got to learn about that a little bit in one of the videos. And then another component of our food program is Fresh Food Connect. And Fresh Food Connect is now its own nonprofit organization. But back in 2014, Groundwork Denver put it together with Denver Food Rescue and Denver Urban Gardens. And its functions to address the ongoing food crisis that exists as a result of the gap between food waste and food access. So a simpler way to put that is basically there are a lot of people that are throwing food away, and there are a lot of people who don't have food to eat. So it's not that there's not enough food to go around, it's just that there's a gap between food that's being thrown away and people that don't have access to food. So Fresh Food Connect functions to attempt to close that gap by taking food that backyard gardeners are growing that maybe they wouldn't have, they don't have enough people to eat it. So they're just going to throw it away, and redistributing that to communities in need. And so the way that Groundwork now functions within Fresh Food Connect is we serve as a redistributor for a few certain locations. So we have a few zip codes that are around our greenhouse, and there's an app. And when we hear there's a backyard farmer that has some produce that they don't need, we get on this funky little trike that's here, and it's electric, and we get to bike around and pick up people's food and then go and redistribute it to lots of food stands and that kind of stuff. And Fresh Food Connect is getting bigger and bigger. It now functions outside of Colorado. It has locations across the US. So if you download the app, you can put in your zip code and see if it functions in your zip code, and then potentially participate, which I think is super cool. So yeah, that is another one of our programs. And that's actually the last program that I'm going to talk about today, because again, as I stated, I could talk about these forever and ever because there are so many of them. But basically all of them serve to address a different facet or a different lens through which environmental justice needs to look in order to try and fight for it. So, there's the food crisis, which is largely an issue of environmental justice and lack of access and food deserts. And then there's energy, and there's water, and there's youth. And so they're all serving to try and come at the issue of environmental justice from a different angle to give us a better chance of solving it on a very localized level. Obviously, we're only working within a few communities in Denver. We're not achieving large scale solutions, but I also firmly believe that solutions start at a small scale and then we'll build up. So I think the work that we do is very important. And moving forward a little bit, looking ahead at our organization specifically and what we're sort of planning. We actually recently got a grant for strategic planning. So we're planning on spending a large portion of this upcoming year sort of turning the lens inwards and reflecting on ourselves as an organization and thinking about what components of our organization are functioning well and what components we could maybe function better to ensure that we're achieving the goal that we want to. So we're going to be doing a lot of that, which I think is very exciting. It will certainly be strenuous and taxing, but I think it's a really important thing for an organization to do, to have intermittent periods of reflection, to make sure that, because ultimately the goal we're trying to achieve is complex and difficult to achieve, and we need to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to achieve that. So that's something that we're doing. Another thing that we're doing is we're focusing heavily on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we have a JEDI committee that meets every single month. And that's, again, a lot of internal reflection about, we're an environmental justice organization. What we do is based in justice. So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job at it. Like, are we doing a good job at having these conversations with communities? Are we doing a good job at ensuring that communities feel comfortable coming and interacting with Groundwork Denver and knowing that their voice will be heard and that things will happen based on the stuff that they're saying? Are we doing a good job within our organization ensuring that all employees feel comfortable and safe and they can voice their issues? So that's also very internally facing. And I know is something that a lot of organizations and workplaces are focusing on in the past year, but I think it's definitely specifically very relevant to us as a justice organization. And then lastly, we're focusing on some new opportunities. We're attempting to expand our youth programs and just increase the types of opportunities that youth have access to. And we're doing that through a lot of grant work. I'm hoping to maybe get to start teaching youth some filmmaking and that sort of skill set, which will be really exciting because we have some youth that are interested in it. But yeah, we're basically going to keep trucking along, doing what we do, doing another year, that kind of stuff. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to speak for such a very long amount of time. I know that it was an aggressive influx of information. And if I hadn't stated already, you can find more information about this on our website. You can also check out our social media. That's a great way to keep up with what we're doing specifically during the moment. And also you can feel free to always reach out to me and ask any questions. And speaking of questions, I'd like to open this opportunity for some. I will do my best to answer them. I will be honest, I don't know everything there is to know about groundwork, so I might potentially refer you to someone who does. But I will do my best to answer your questions now if there are any.
Thank you very much, Quinn. I'm going to turn off the recording now and we will